Hey guys, I'm Tucker Marshall, and today we're going to be covering my research on childcare accessibility in the New River Valley and how it affects those in that community. First and foremost, childcare accessibility relates to reproductive justice as it is kind of based off the framework of reproductive justice and how a parent gets to choose how to raise their child, and childcare is a part of that. And so I kind of thought it would be interesting to ask the people I interviewed what they thought of reproductive justice or even if they knew the term, and these were some of the responses that I got. Are you familiar with the term reproductive justice?
I can't say that I am.
I have never heard that term before. Yeah.
No one knew what it meant, but that is kind of fair because reproductive justice is a new term and not many people just know it right off the top of their heads. I'm going to use this new term and I'm going to look at childcare more historically. And in the past, childcare really wasn't an issue. In the 1800s, a lot of families worked together, so there wasn't a need for childcare as they were working at their house and on the farm and doing daily chores. So they didn't really have to go look for outside care. And with the Industrial Revolution, children also worked in factories to earn money for the household. But around the early 19th century, we saw some daycares kind of be established in the United States. They were usually by private charities and were mostly for the upper class, but as time went on, children left the workforce due to child protective laws, and so it became more essential and less of a privilege that the upper classes just enjoyed. But this form of childcare was different than the ones that we see today. Most people taking care of the children were their grandparents or other family members that weren't working. And for those who didn't have those people to watch it, it was really just the child going home themselves and taking care of themselves. That was really common up until around the 90s when we had this new style of parenting and the term the helicopter mom came about. With this new parenting, children were being watched a majority of the day. And this new parenting style has grown more popular and more intense as children can virtually not be left alone at all. In the 70s, people would get off, kids would get off the bus and they would go home by themselves. Nowadays, doing that can garner a call to CPS from fellow parents and or the bus driver. And this change in parenting isn't without cause. American society has changed drastically, where usually both parents are working, and the times they work don't really line up with the hours of schooling. And so we have this need for childcare, but we haven't really changed that much to actually help with that issue. All of this has kind of added to the current status of the River Valley in regards to childcare. And so they have specific needs, as most different communities do. And in the New River Valley, they need many high-quality centers that can provide for them, as there are 2 colleges in the NRV, which means that there's a large population of college students and employees of the college, which entails a lot more children and growth, and so there's a lot of high-quality care that's kind of being demanded in this area. And in this area, we've seen a lot of facilities closing. And this has been due to the fact that they're trying to keep costs lower so that people can afford them more easily, but then there's not necessarily enough money to kind of go around after that. And some facilities have seen a lack of clients and students to come in, and so they end up closing because they only have 6 students, and that's not enough to run the facility. Whereas others in the area have a 5-year waiting list. There's this one called Rainbow Riders, and I remember it growing up. And they have their own school buses that pick kids up from school. They're top of the line. They take 5 to 6 years to get into, and their facilities aren't even that good. And all of this has kind of affected the community as they have to rely on some alternatives to paying for actual child care and have to kind of accept the lower quality child care. One of the people I interviewed actually said that childcare in the New River Valley sucks on a majority, and so that's why she kind of struggled to find the facility that she's now using. I also asked the interviewees how they thought childcare accessibility affects those in their area, and these were the responses I got.
I think overall there is childcare available. It's about whether you get into the childcare that you want. And so if you want to get into a specific childcare, you need to think ahead and get yourself on a waiting list. And sometimes that means before you've even gotten pregnant. There's very limited childcare availability in my area, especially for those of lower socioeconomic status.
Clearly, these two interviewees contradicted each other, but they were both mothers from different areas of the New River Valley, and so they had different experiences, and this was rather expected and actually quite common in some of the answers I got throughout this project. And the interviewees also told me that this has kind of gone unchanged, so what they've experienced has been rather similar throughout, like, say, the 2000s to the 2010s and now. And so this has really been due to the fact that childcare has been sidelined in the New River Valley. There's a lot of unemployment and some poverty going on in the New River Valley, and there's more of a housing crisis. So this has kind of caused people to focus on that, especially the town officials and those who make the laws, I guess, for the town. And so we've seen this drop in focus on childcare accessibility, which has caused all of these issues, so people can't afford it, whereas other facilities can't afford to stay open because they're being so cheap, and overall a lack in quality childcare. And so we have all of these issues, and it's being sidelined, which means that there's really no local programs trying to fix this issue, which brings up a concern for the future. And so I also asked my interviewees what they thought could be some concerns for the future, and here's what they had to say.
Okay. Are you concerned with childcare accessibility in the future?
Not for myself.
Do you see any concerns for other people?
Nothing more than what has always existed.
Okay.
Getting in the right one. I do worry about those of lower class standings being able to have their children prepared for the demands of the public school kindergarten.
So what are some solutions to fix this issue in the future? I thought that adding more governmental programs at a higher level would work better, maybe some more local programs, and getting the focus onto childcare accessibility in the New River Valley, as it has been so pushed aside that no one's even paying attention. Like, there needs to be this awareness, and educating the public on this issue could really help with that. One of the people I interviewed actually had a really good answer to this question.
I think that it should be offered to basically anybody, because we have such not a civilization. Our American way of life is we work all the time, but our school hours don't quite match the hours that we're asking people to work. So before school, after school, we have these gaps where we're expecting parents to be available, but not providing childcare for these kids. And so I think that it should be income-based. I think that if somebody doesn't quite make enough, because childcare is very, very expensive, even with an affordable program like mine. So if you have a family who's making minimum wage, childcare, even an affordable one like mine, it isn't necessarily an option. So I think we should try to do more vouchers or ways to incentivize people to take advantage of daycare programs or childcare programs.
The man in this interview actually runs a after-school educational program at a elementary school in the New River Valley, and I really loved his answer. It kind of looked at stuff that I didn't even really think about, like making it income-based. I thought that was ingenious, and I loved it. He also looked at this as more of a nationwide issue, which is so very true. When I started this thought, was 100% just a local thing. Like, definitely could be in other areas, but I didn't realize just how wide it went. Like, this is a ginormous issue. It is across all states, and the government has actually implemented some programs to try and help with this issue. Some of these programs are the No Child Left Behind Act, the Child Care and Development Block Grant, the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, Social Services Block Grant, Head Start Program, and the Department of Education. And these don't all focus on child care accessibility, but they do have like some extra funds and little sub programs within them that help with the issue and focus on that solely. And while we have all these lovely programs and much more, they're not really doing a whole ton. Like, they could be doing so much more. Most of the money is focused on getting facilities licensed, and that is wonderful, but we see a high turnover rate in employees in like early childhood learning, and that is especially common in the New River Valley. So there's much more that these programs could be doing. For example, they could be subsidizing some of the costs for these early like childhood centers for those who are in need and making it more affordable for them that way. They could also make some sort of law that kind of limits the cost we put on childcare, because especially in specific areas, the price can be astronomical. And overall, just try and improve the situation so that we don't have as many unlicensed facilities and unlicensed home run facilities and all these unsafe areas. Like, just make this a better thing so that there aren't as many problems. Now, as for my experience researching this, it was quite a lengthy process and had a lot of twists and turns. Most of my information I found really contradicted itself, and it took a lot of self-growth, I'd say, to kind of weave out like the truth and like what is the actual status of this whole thing in my community. Like, interviewing people on this really gave me a sense of the community that I hadn't really had before. I'd always been a part of the community, but I've never been a part of the child care community. This project has kind of changed the whole way I look at child care in general. Like, I knew it was kind of a necessity and I knew it was overpriced, but I didn't really care. I was just like, yeah, so what? But now I see like some of the real negative effects and how we're really not trying to fix it, and it's not going to get better if we don't do anything. And I really like this project because it kind of opened me up to this side of reproductive justice in my community that I hadn't really known before. It was a nice journey for me, I guess I'd say. I now know how much this affects my community and so many others, and this is a real issue that is being sidelined in my area. And in doing so, it's just going to cause more problems in the future.